Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. This is an introduction to the teachings of the Buddha course where I'm going to help you guys to get started understanding his teachings. I'm going to start with meditation, but then afterwards, I'm going to help you to understand what the Buddha's teachings are and what they are not. And then I'm going to teach you his very first teaching. This will be a 3-hour course where we're going to spend time together helping you guys to really get acquainted with his teachings. We're going to start with meditation. So if you'd like to join for that, the way that I start is with some chanting in order to be able to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. The Buddha used chanting during his lifetime in order to help his students to commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, the students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. So this is how they used it as a learning tool, as a learning device. So there isn't anything mystical or magical here in the teachings of the Buddha. It's not a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer. It was just used as a learning tool, as a learning device, where today we use books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, things like this to learn. They needed to use chanting because they would listen to the Buddha teach, and then every 2 weeks they would just recite it orally. So there's definitely people that will tell you there's some kind of magical powers with these chants and things like that, but none of that is actually true. The Buddha used it just as a way to help his students to be able to commit the teachings to memory. There are no rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer in the teachings of the Buddha. The way that we use these chants today is as a way to help you get more benefit out of the meditation. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to, and you'll see that you'll actually get more benefit out of the chanting through, you'll get more benefit out of the meditation by doing the chanting. The chants are over there on the cabinet. There's a laminated sheet over there. You're welcome to help yourself to get one. For those of you guys that are online, you'll find this on our website. If you go to buddhadailywisdom.com, click on free books, and then if you scroll down towards the middle of the page to 2/3 of the way down, you'll see the daily chanting sheet there. If you get one of the versions of these chanting sheets, you're going to read the English translations. You'll see that it'll actually have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha inside these chants. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants himself, because the Buddha wouldn't have walked around and said, "Here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me." This would be ego or arrogance if someone chose to do that. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have that in your mind anymore. You just think of everybody as being equal. But the unenlightened mind will want to put yourself above people and look down on people, or you'll put yourself below people. This is not what you're interested in doing. You like to train your mind to get to the point where you just view everybody as being equal. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from the anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings that are experienced in the unenlightened state to the peaceful and joyful mental state that is enlightenment, and this teacher didn't want anything or expect anything from you, you might actually have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's why I think that came from his students, either during his life or after his death. Once we're in the meditation, I'm going to be providing some guidance where I'll essentially be teaching you or instructing you how to meditate while we're meditating together. Then there'll be a period of time of quietness where we're all meditating. Everyone here at the temple and anyone joining online will just all be meditating at the same time. During this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping, someone here might cough or sneeze. This is all normal. If you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you'll cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated or agitated or some other discontent feeling. This is why you can eliminate your anger and frustration and all these feelings, is because it's the mind itself that is actually causing these feelings. What the mind does in the unenlightened state is it craves permanence, but you live in an impermanent world. Things are going to be constantly changing. So if you understand that and you're in meditation and you hear a sound, you'll just understand this is the way the world works, that these sounds are going to arise, they're going to change, and then they're going to fade away. And you can be at ease in your meditation. So I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds during the meditation. Then we're going to come out of that with some more chanting. And then that's where I'll start today's course, helping you guys to understand what the teachings of the Buddha are, what they are not. And ultimately, we're going to study his very first teaching. His very first teaching is going to guide you in understanding what is the problem in the mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward of how to completely fix it. This is the first place that people would start with. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he would start students with this very first teaching. So we're going to start with that today as well. In terms of your body position for meditation, There's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times as part of your journey to enlightenment. It's kind of like having a tool belt, and you use the different tools that you need at different times depending on what's going on. So oftentimes people are starting in the seated position. So I'll share some information with you on that to help you get started. And then you can learn these other positions in the various courses and retreats that we share to be able to help you learn them all. There's no one fixed way to actually sit during meditation. You can really sit however you like. What I'm going to share with you are just suggestions or recommendations that you might consider. But if you find a way to sit that you feel that is comfortable, that is different than what I'm sharing, you can sit that way too. There isn't just one fixed way to sit, because that would be permanent. So we don't live in that world. We live in an impermanent world. So you can sit however you like. You could sit on the floor, in a chair. Maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. If you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This will help soften your seats a little bit. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you might just choose to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets their hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips and knees and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way. Some people put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because it'll help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you're real rigid with the upper body, your mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle, where it's not painful and it's not luxurious, but it's in the middle where it's comfortable. And this is where your mind can be at ease and peaceful. Not only does it help keep the mind attentive and alert, but it also makes it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. If you are going to sit in a chair, sometimes people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair here with my legs crossed, so this is an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like, and it's helpful if the upper body is erect if you're sitting in a chair as well. So again, I'm going to start with the chanting. You guys are welcome to join in, and then I'll come back in with the guidance after the chanting to help you guys. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Wat Tung Mahakewanang Apivateyami Sawakato Mahakewata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakewato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso emakewa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sekatoro kawitu anutero purisa Dhamma sati satatawa manusrang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here, you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. หังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนัมสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังโอโตภาควาติ All right, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good afternoon to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone online as well. So I'm going to start off where we can start to understand what is an actual Buddha. Because if I'm going to introduce you to the teachings of the Buddha, I'm going to start with helping you guys to understand what is an actual Buddha, because that's a great place to actually get started. As I share with you guys, I'm going to be sharing with you multiple things over our time together, but let's just start with this to help you guys to understand what is an actual Buddha. An actual Buddha meets three primary criteria. The first criteria is that they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. The second one is that they devote the rest of their life, dedicate their life to sharing the teachings that it took for them to get to enlightenment with countless other people. And during that period of time, countless people will get to enlightenment. Then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. This is a very rare type of individual in the world. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So the individual who we refer to as the Buddha, he meets all three of these criteria here. But there's other things too that a Buddha is going to be practicing and is going to be experiencing beyond just these three. An individual who's going to become a Buddha, they have a deep, profound memory. They can remember countless details about their current life and their previous lives as well. This is what actually allows them to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They accumulate wisdom over multiple lifetimes and they apply it in their last life to be able to get to enlightenment by themselves. Even in the unenlightened state, they have a very profound memory. So for example, as an average human being, you have a certain limited capacity to your memory. That's why if you think back to your childhood, you just have spotty memories. Where like in the last 5 or 10 years or so, you have a pretty good recall of all the things that you've been up to. It's kind of like a hard drive, that a hard drive has a certain capacity, like 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte. And when you get to capacity, you need to delete old files in order to store the new files. An individual who's going to become a Buddha, their mind doesn't function that way. They actually have have an unlimited capacity to store countless details about their current life and their past life too. They're not deleting old files in order to store new files. So this is what allows them to be able to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. An individual who becomes a Buddha, they can quickly determine the condition of someone's mind by spending time with that person, and then they're able to offer that person teachings to be able to help them to be able to get closer and closer to enlightenment. Because a Buddha can actually see the pollutions of someone else's mind. They can actually see what's going on in that person's mind. So a Buddha can quickly determine the condition of someone else's mind and then help them with teachings. But they don't do that with just a random person. They're not going to like walk into a restaurant and be like, whoa, over there, you need to do that, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. It's only with their students. This is one of the things that helps them to be so effective at helping people get to enlightenment. And then lastly, an individual who's a Buddha, they're a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. Whatever it is that they actually are teaching through their spoken words, they're also practicing those same things too, because they understand that they're teaching just as much through their spoken words as they are through their actions. So as I shared, this type of individual is very rare in the world. Nowadays, you'll hear people tell you that everybody is a Buddha. But that's not what the Buddha taught. The Buddha never taught that. That's what people are saying today, but that's not actually true. A Buddha is a very rare, very unique type of individual. We actually refer to this person not only as a Buddha, but as a fully, perfectly enlightened one. The reason why is because they don't have any teachers or any guides. So by the time they get to enlightenment, what they understand about the path is the path to enlightenment. Where an average person, if you're learning from someone who's not an actual Buddha, that teacher will be teaching you things that might lead to your enlightenment. But by the time you get to enlightenment, not everything that they taught you actually led to your enlightenment. There are certain things that actually didn't produce enlightenment. And you might still be doing those things and practicing those things. So you kind of have like a little extra baggage in your mind, where if you've been actually getting to enlightenment by yourself, like this type of individual would, if they try a certain meditation and it's working to improve the condition of their mind, they know that this is part of the path to enlightenment. But if they try something and it's not working to improve their mind, they'll actually discard it. So by the time they get to enlightenment, what they know is the path to enlightenment. And then they spend the rest of their life dedicating time to be able to help others to understand that path. It's like putting lights alongside of the path and illuminating it so that other people can actually see it and understand it and how to be able to get to enlightenment. So you'll be able to get to enlightenment, but you won't be a Buddha at that point, and you'll be plenty pleased with getting to enlightenment. So this type of individual is referred to as a fully, perfectly enlightened one because they don't have that extra baggage. They fully understand exactly what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. So, like I mentioned, this type of person is very rare. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So now we can talk about what the teachings of a Buddha are, since you understand now what a Buddha is. A Buddha is going to share teachings that are a path to attaining enlightenment through purification of the mind, that they're going to share teachings that are going to help you to be able to get to this enlightened mental state. What enlightenment is, where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of that is eliminated from the mind by training the mind. Oftentimes people think that it's others that are causing these feelings, but I'm going to help you to see by the end of today how it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And that's really beautiful to be able to understand that, because once you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, then you understand that you can actually eliminate it. That's why the Buddha was able to eliminate his discontent feelings, because he was able to train his own mind. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll notice that you have a high degree of focus, concentration, clarity. You'll have memory. This is what the mind will be performing as, because the Buddha figured out that there's these certain pollutions that are in the mind. And when you uproot those pollutions through the tools and the techniques that he taught, your mind will perform optimally. So you'll notice there's focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll notice that you can be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all situations, where right now you might find that to be a bit challenging. You might be in certain situations where you're a bit bitter bitter or harsh or frustrated or agitated or annoyed with people, maybe resentful. That's just because of what's going on in the mind and the pollutions in the mind. You'll have deep wisdom about how to train your mind, and you'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all situations. You won't be causing harm to other beings by the time you get to enlightenment. You'll notice because of that, your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. They'll be at ease. Where in the unenlightened state with that bitterness and harshness and hostility, when you put that out, you'll think that it's actually being caused by someone else. You might actually feel like you're justified in that conduct. But what you'll find is that it damages your relationships. And then it just ends up coming back to you that those people treat you in that same way that you're treating them. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you're treating everyone very lovingly, very gently, very kindly. And you'll see that more and more as you do that, people will treat you in the same way. And then you'll notice by the time you get to enlightenment that you're not even in a bad mood anymore, that it's physically impossible for you to experience a bad mood. It just doesn't happen. So the way that this is occurring is through a purification of the mind. You're purifying the mind of certain pollutions. The Buddha discovered certain pollutions that are in the mind, and then he figured out the tools and the techniques of how to uproot them and get them out of the mind. When we talk about these at the most detailed level, we talk about them as the 10 fetters. These are 10 individual pollutions or defilements that are in the mind. They're referred to as fetters because during the lifetime of the Buddha, if they were trying to keep you confined to a certain area, they would attach a fetter around your ankle. What a fetter is a shackle and a chain and a ball. This would be like a prisoner, and they would keep them in a field, where today we keep prisoners in jail cells or prison cells. That's how we keep them confined so that they don't cause harm to other beings. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would put a fetter around your ankle. So when he discovers these 10 pollutions in the mind, he refers to them as fetters because it's keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state where you're experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and all these other feelings over and over and over and over again. But just like the prisoner, if you release the shackle off their ankle, they're free. They can roam about the world. They're liberated. The same thing is true about your mind, that when you get rid of these pollutions or these fetters out of the mind, your mind is now free. It's liberated. You'll experience the peace and the joy as your mind's gradually moving in that direction. So when we talk about them at the deepest level of detail, we talk about them as fetters. But when we talk about them at more of a high level, we talk about them as craving, anger, and ignorance. This is the unknowing of true reality. I'm going to introduce you to what these are so you can kind of get a little bit of an understanding of what I'm talking about here. And all the teachings of the Buddha, when you're learning them, it's important that you don't believe any of his teachings. So don't believe what I'm sharing with you here about these 3 poisons. You need to be able to learn it, investigate it, and examine it intellectually. You need to reflect on it to verify if it's true or if it's false, and then you need to practice it to be able to see the truth for yourself. This is how you get to wisdom. So when I describe these 3 poisons and the symptoms that you experience because of it, you'll be able to verify that your mind has this because I'll be describing for you what you experience. So craving is the mind's longing, yearning. This is the mind's wants and expectations. This is the mind chasing after the objects of its affection, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind will chase it and chase it and chase it and chase it. It's almost like an unquenchable thirst that the mind has. The mind's like, what do I need to be happy here? I know what. Let me get some more money. That'll fix everything. I'll get some more money. And now the mind will chase after the money. And if you get your money, you'll be really happy and excited about that, but that's going to eventually fade away. Or if you don't get your money, you'll be angry and frustrated. You'll experience some painful feeling. And then the mind's like, what do I need to feel better here? A new boyfriend, a new girlfriend. That'll fix everything. Let me get one of those. And now you'll chase after that for a little while. And you'll get one of those. And then you'll be happy at the beginning when you get that. But then that'll fade away too. You'll end up right back in the anger and frustration. And then the mind's like, what do I need to be happy? I know. I'll go to Thailand. That'll fix everything. Let me go to Thailand. And now you come to Thailand and you're so happy and excited to come to Thailand. But then when it's time to go home, you're kind of like frustrated or angry or irritated, right? So the mind is going to be thinking that something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So the mind will chase it and chase it and chase it and chase it. And if it gets what it wants, it gets what's called pleasant feelings. These are conditional. Based on some condition, it will experience this pleasant feeling of happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, or euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants and what it expects, what it's craving, it'll get painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. And when that anger is arising, which is the second poison here, the second pollution, when this anger is arising, it's very painful. And the mind firmly believes it's coming from something external. So what the mind will tend to do is you'll tend to push people away out of your life. You might have pushed away friends or family out of your life, thinking they were causing your anger. But when you push them out of your life, you see it didn't actually solve your problem because you still get angry, you still get frustrated. If this was the true cause of your problem, when you push them out of your life, you'd be peaceful and joyful from that point forward. This is called aversion, where you're pushing people away, thinking that they're the ones causing you to be angry. Or the second thing you'll do when you don't realize that it's your own craving that's causing these feelings is you'll tend to be bitter and harsh and hostile with people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to fear it into doing things your way. It's like, "Rrr, I want my craving fulfilled. Do things my way." So the mind will kind of be bitter and harsh and hostile. Or the third thing you'll do is you'll tend to put your expectations on people and try to pressure them to get them to do things your way. And as long as the mind's doing this, you can't actually live harmoniously with all beings, because it's only a matter of time. If you spend time with someone, it's only a matter of time before you start seeing they do things differently than you. And when they start doing things differently than you, your mind won't like that because you're craving this permanence. The mind wants things to be permanent and do things a particular way. But yet you live in an impermanent world. Things are constantly changing. So when this anger is arising and you're pushing away, you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile, or putting expectations on people, people choose to leave out of your life, or you have damaged relationships and things of this nature. And where this is all coming from is the third one. Oftentimes people refer to this as ignorance. I use the phrase unknowing of true reality because we're translating the words of the Buddha into English, and the Buddha wouldn't have referred to people as ignorant or stupid or foolish, because that would be a derogatory, degrading way to refer to somebody. And an enlightened being doesn't talk about people in that way. Instead, the Buddha would have said the unknowing of true reality, or the lack of wisdom or confusion or misunderstanding, because the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It continues to crave, and it continues to have anger. So while we call it craving, anger, and ignorance, it's actually because of ignorance that craving and anger continues. If it wasn't for this lack of wisdom and this confusion that the mind has, it would have already eliminated its craving and it would have already eliminated its anger. So that's why everything on the path to enlightenment is about the cultivation of wisdom, because you need to be able to transform this ignorance into wisdom where you can see true reality and you can see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. But as long as you go around blaming other people for what you're experiencing, you'll keep pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, or putting expectations on people. And now the individual is going to keep experiencing anger and frustration over and over and over again. So we're going to get into this a lot more when we talk about the Four Noble Truths, but this is just kind of like a high level of the pollutions that the mind is dealing with and what it's experiencing because of that. So everything on the path to enlightenment is about the cultivation of wisdom. It's not beliefs, because with belief, you don't know it's true or false. You're just believing it because somebody convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. What the Buddha is helping you to cultivate wisdom about is the natural laws of existence. The natural laws is how the world actually truly works, because the mind is actually confused about that and how things actually truly work in the world. So the main natural law that the Buddha is helping you to understand is called the natural law of Gama. You might have heard this referred to as karma. The word karma is from the Sanskrit language, where the word Gama is from the Pali language. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, so people who study his teachings will tend to use that word. If it translated to just one English word, I would just use that because it'd be easier for everybody. But since it doesn't translate to just one English word, I still need to use this word Gama. What this means is cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. Whenever you make decisions wisely, you will experience wholesome Gama. But when you make decisions unwisely, you will experience unwholesome karma or unwholesome results. The mind in the unenlightened state lacks wisdom of this natural law, and this natural law affects you whether you're aware of it or not. It's a natural law of cause and effect, or action and result. Whenever there's a decision that's made, there's going to be a result of that decision. And now what you experience coming back to you is your karma, either wholesome or unwholesome. So the mind in the unenlightened state, when it lacks wisdom of natural laws, it will struggle and it will have difficulties. That's what the stress and the anxiety is. That's the guilt and the shame and the fear and all these other feelings. That's the mind struggling to live in a world that it doesn't understand. So just like with the natural law of gravity, we all struggled with that growing up as a child. This natural law affected us, whether we were aware of it or not. And slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law. When we did understand this natural law, we really struggled. We fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbows, we broke our toys, and we cried and cried and cried. We were so upset when we were little kids because we didn't understand this natural law. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law. You might say that we awoke or we awakened to the natural law of gravity, meaning we cultivated wisdom about this natural law. We learned to tie our shoes a bit tighter. We learned to look at the surface of the sidewalk. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around like a kid all the time. Now we're at the point where we can ride bicycles, we can climb ladders, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the place because we fully awoke to the natural law of gravity. We didn't believe in this natural law. We could actually see the truth for ourselves. It's right there. That's the natural law. Right? Nobody's believing that this natural law exists. We can see it for ourselves. And now we don't actually struggle and have difficulties with this anymore. In fact, if we fall down now, we might actually start laughing. Whereas a child, we might have been upset because we didn't understand, right? So there's other natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. And when you lack wisdom of those natural laws, just like with the natural law of gravity, you will tend to make unwise decisions because of the ignorance, because of that unknowing of true reality. And now when you're experiencing unwholesome results coming back to you, what the mind will tend to do is blame other people. That's what the unenlightened mind does, because it can't be me that's causing all of this. It's got to be somebody else, right? That's what the mind's thinking because of its ego. It thinks that I'm right and everyone else is wrong, and it couldn't be me that caused this thing to happen. So slowly but surely, what the Buddha is helping you to be able to do is cultivate wisdom of this natural law. And that's what we mean when we say awaken or to be awake. It is to cultivate wisdom about this cause and effect or this action and results, so that then you can understand the wise decisions that lead to wholesome results or wholesome karma, and you can understand the unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome karma. Because if you continue to think what you are experiencing is maybe good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate, or maybe it's God that's controlling what you experience, or some entity called the universe, or if you blame other people, then that means you're stuck because you can't change any of that stuff. And those things aren't actually true. It's not good luck and bad luck. There's no such thing as good luck and bad luck. There's no such thing as destiny or fate. This being God is not controlling you. There's no entity called the universe that has any special power to control you. And it's not other people that are actually causing you to experience certain things in your day-to-day life. If you're having challenges to see this, ask yourself some of these questions that I'm going to share with you. Because what you're experiencing is the result of decisions that you're making. Ask yourself these questions. Who chose where you're sitting right now? Who chose the clothing that you're wearing? Who chose the hairstyle that you have? Who chose whether or not you ate breakfast this morning? Who chose the location where you live? Who chose the friends or family that you spend time with? Who chose the job or occupation that you have? What you're seeing here is there's a trend, right? It's you're making all these decisions. And when we experience difficulties and struggles, we tend to blame what we're experiencing on someone else, but it's decisions that we're making. So this natural law of karma isn't anything mystical or magical. It's not about blame or fault. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's not a system of punishments and rewards. I've heard many things over the years. Sometimes people talk about a black cloud that's following you around, right? Or maybe like a bank account that you deposit into and you get to make withdrawals from this bank account. It's really quite simple. It's just a sequence of events that when you make certain decisions, there's going to be a certain result. And you would like to know what that sequence of events are. Because, for example, if I was walking down the beach and there's wind blowing in my face and I'm kicking up the sand and the sand is blowing in my face and I'm like, this is good luck or bad luck. Or this is my destiny. This is my fate. Or this is God or some entity called the universe that is causing this. Or this is other people that are doing this. Well, I'm going to keep walking down the beach kicking up sand, and I'm going to have a pretty miserable experience walking down the beach. But if I understand it's my decisions that are leading to this, then that means if there's anything in your life that you don't particularly care for and you would rather not occur, all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. That's the beauty of this natural law, is that all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you experience different results. But with that ignorance or that unknowing of true reality, the mind won't do that. And with the ego in there, making you think that everybody else is the problem, your mind will tend to not do that. So the teachings of the Buddha are to be able to help you get rid of this out of the mind, this ignorance, by cultivating wisdom to understand this natural law. So the Buddha taught you to learn, reflect, and practice. Learning is to investigate and examine something intellectually. Then you'd like to reflect on that in order to verify, based on your own direct experiences in life, is this potentially true or false? And then you integrate that teaching into your life and you practice it. And as you practice it and you start training your mind through that teaching, that's where you see things get better for you, because now you start seeing the real results. The condition of your mind's improving, your relationships are improving. That's where you really can see the true wisdom. So through this process of learning, reflecting, and practicing, your mind cultivates wisdom, and that's what transforms it. So wisdom isn't just intellectual. It's not just intellectually knowing something. It's actually making decisions through that intellectual knowledge. That's when your mind is awakening, because you're now making decisions through that intellectual understanding. So that's why you need to do the learning, the reflection, and the practice in order to be able to see the results. So the Buddha didn't explain to you how the world should be, and that if everybody follows rules and commandments, the world's going to become a better place. He didn't explain the way the world should be. He explained the way the world is. And by understanding the way the world is, now with that wisdom, you will navigate the world more peacefully because you understand how the world truly is. So you're training your mind to experience complete peace and joy by acquiring wisdom of the natural laws. And this is what's going to help you to eradicate those pollutions. Because once you understand what those pollutions are and you have the wisdom of it, then you can eliminate them. It's just like at one time, we didn't have wisdom about how to clean this body. When we were growing up as a kid, we didn't know how to take a shower. We didn't know how to take a bath. We didn't know how to brush our teeth. But slowly but surely, people taught it to us. And at first we were like, I don't want to learn that. I'm too busy playing with my toys. I got to go play with my friends. I don't have time for a shower or a bath. We weren't interested at all. But slowly but surely, again, we started seeing the benefits in this. And we were like, I kind of like this whole bath thing. I like this shower thing. I think I'm going to do this on my own. My mom and dad don't even have to tell me to do it anymore. I'm going to just get in there and do it myself. And now you probably can't even imagine going a day without taking a shower or taking a bath, right? Well, there's this other part to this being who you are. There's not just the physical body, there's the mind as well. And if you haven't learned how to clean the mind, well, of course you have stress. Of course you have anxiety. Of course you have guilt and shame and fear and all these other feelings. Because if you didn't clean the body for several days, weeks, months, or years, and you were walking around like that, you'd be pretty uncomfortable. So if you haven't been cleaning the mind, well, of course you're uncomfortable walking around in certain situations. So none of us grew up in a place where we were actually learning how to clean the mind. We only learned how to clean the body. So that's what you're doing now, potentially as an adult, choosing to learn how to clean the mind. And that's what the Buddha is helping you to be able to understand how to do. And now as you do it, you'll see the results and the benefits. And that's where you'll be more and more inclined and more interested to clean up the mind, because you'll see how it improves your mind and how it functions, and your relationships will be gradually improving as well. So the teachings of the Buddha are timeless. He spoke very clear, very concise, and very precise, because he's teaching these natural laws. Those natural laws haven't changed. 2,500 years ago, he was born in 563 BC. He was born in a region of the world that we refer to as Nepal, and he taught in Northeast India. And he described the natural laws. He didn't base his teachings in culture. He didn't base his teachings in anything like that. He's explaining these natural laws that affect all of us, no matter where you are in the world. So that's why his teachings are timeless, because these natural laws haven't actually changed over time. And he speaks very clear, very concise, and very precise. When you see his words, it's very apparent to you what he's teaching. You don't have to interpret them. You don't have to figure out what he's saying. It's very clear and very precise of what he's actually describing. He did teach about the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence. But even this is something that you should never believe. There's no belief in his teachings. When you first get started, I suggest people just set this aside, because what's happened in the past in terms of the cycle of rebirth, it's in the past. It doesn't matter. What may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. It doesn't matter right now. What matters is you're in this human realm. Your mind is discontent. You experience anger and frustration and these other feelings, and you like to get rid of it. So focus on the core central teachings that are going to help you to do that. But over time, maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, you'll notice that you're going to need to start exploring this cycle of rebirth and understanding these 5 realms, because the Buddha taught this for a reason, and I'll explain to you why he taught it, and it becomes helpful for you in your journey to enlightenment. But you should never believe it. You can actually independently verify that these things are true. So as you're learning and growing and developing on the path, what you do at first is you focus on the core central teachings to be able to train your mind and uproot these pollutions. But as you do, and you're lifting this pollution out of the mind, you might start having certain experiences. So for example, you might start having observation of your past lives. You might start being able to recall your past lives. And if you start having vivid memories of your past life or lives, and you didn't realize that that's what that is, it could really shake you up. So for example, if you started having vivid memories of being murdered, and these memories just kept replaying in your mind over and over and over and over and over and over again, and you didn't realize that that was your past life memories, and you can just let it go and train your mind to not focus on it, you could get really shaken up in that situation. So the Buddha taught you this because you're going to need to know that if you start having those vivid memories, because obviously you haven't been murdered in this life. You're still alive, right? But that's something that the mind can experience, is having past life memories, and it can really shake you up if you don't understand that's what that is. In terms of these 5 realms that the Buddha taught, the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, the human realm, and the heavenly realm, oftentimes people think of these things as in some far distant land, like heaven is way up in the sky somewhere far away, or hell is like deep down in the core of the earth. This isn't actually true. All of us are in the same time and space. Just like there's human beings that are sitting here now, if we got up and left, there could be an animal that comes and sits in this chair, right? There could be a cockroach or a gecko or a cat or a dog could come here. The same thing is true with these other beings. The hell beings, the afflicted spirits, which are like ghosts, and the heavenly beings, they are formless beings. They don't have physical form, but they're in the same time and space as all of us. So as you're starting to train your mind, and sometimes people experience this even before training their mind, you might actually see some of these beings. Some people can see ghosts, or they can see heavenly beings, or they can see hell beings. And if you didn't understand this is the way the world truly is, it could really shake you up, because you're going to be seeing things that other people aren't necessarily seeing. Or sometimes people can actually hear these beings because they're in the same time and space as us. You can actually hear them talking. So just like if you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody was talking kind of loud, you could ignore that conversation and just focus on your conversation. You can actually train your mind to do that, But if you don't understand these voices that you're hearing, it actually is from other realms, and other people don't hear those voices, you could think you're going quite crazy, and you might actually be shaken up by that. But if you understand that this is normal and you could just train your mind to ignore it, now you can be quite stable. So the Buddha taught this because this is the way the world is, that there's this continuous cycle of rebirth and there's these 5 realms of existence, and you might start having experiences that are helping you to independently verify that. And that's what's going to help you to be able to know this is true. But if you didn't understand that, it could really shake you up. But you should never believe in these things, and I suggest people to just set them aside when they first get started. Sometimes people have had experiences before they come to this path, and they already have kind of dabbled in some of this stuff, and they've seen some of these things. Other times they haven't. No matter where you are, I suggest you just set it aside. But right now, you might actually be believing that you only have one life, but it's just a belief because you don't have any evidence that you only have one life. The only reason why you might think that is somebody said to you that there's only one life, or you might have read it in a book or something like that, but you don't have any evidence of this. So belief is something that you're just believing. You don't have any evidence to independently verify it, other than maybe right now you can't remember your past lives. But if you start remembering and recalling them, you'll know and understand that this is actually true. So in our book series here, I have 13 books. In volume 11, chapter 105, I have 17 different criteria of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. But it's in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, because that's not now that you need to really be learning this when you first get started. But I just at least introduced this to you so that you know that it's part of the teachings of the Buddha, and he taught it for a reason. But I suggest you just set it aside when you first get started. The Buddha did teach about this being of God. Sometimes you'll hear people that will tell you the opposite of this. This isn't true. Sometimes people will tell you that the Buddha denied the existence of God, or that he rejected God, or that he refused to answer the question of whether God exists or not. These are all untrue. For anybody who says that, they haven't actually penetrated into the teachings of the Buddha very closely, because it's very clear that he did teach about this being, but he didn't put this being at the center of his teachings. There's no worshiping of this being. There's no praying to this being. There's no fear of this being. It's not this being who's punishing you and rewarding you or anything like that. He didn't put this being at the center of his teachings because it's not this being who determines whether you get to enlightenment or not. It's you that determine whether you get to enlightenment or not. So we actually put you at the center of his teachings. What this path is this inner growth, this inner development, becoming a better and better person. So that's not related to God. It's not dependent on God whether you choose to train your mind or not. So he did teach about this being, but he didn't teach things that you might have been exposed to in other places. So you could choose to get to enlightenment with a relationship with this being of God, or you could choose to get to enlightenment without a relationship with this being. It's really up to you. And if you study with me enough, you'll actually see that I teach students both ways. If someone would like to have a relationship with God, okay, I can teach you how to get to enlightenment that way. If you're not interested in having a relationship with God, I can teach you how to get to enlightenment that way too. So the Buddha did teach about this being, but he didn't put the being at the center of his teachings, because it's not this being that determines whether you get to enlightenment. He put you at the center of his teachings because it's you that determined that. The largest, most complete collection that we have of the teachings of the Buddha is called the Pali Canon. During his lifetime, everything was taught orally because the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. You might not see writing something down as technology, but 2,500 years ago, that was technology, and it hadn't made its way to that region of the world yet. Just like today, technology kind of rolls throughout the world. It's the same thing, that it hadn't made its way there yet. So the language that he was speaking didn't even have a script because there was no purpose for it. So everything was oral. But then shortly after his death, there were countless people who had gotten to enlightenment during his life. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you will never forget the teachings that it took for you to get to enlightenment. It's like upgrading your operating system in your mind. You will never forget those teachings. So right after his death, about 500 of these countless enlightened beings got together and they started to document his teachings. And they recalled his teachings and they agreed that this is what he actually taught. And today we refer to that as the Pali Canon. This is the largest, most complete collection that we have of the teachings of the Buddha. But not everything he taught is in the Pali Canon. And not everything that he taught is, or not everything that's in the Pali Canon is actually what he taught, right? Because of impermanence, things constantly change. And that's why you're interested in learning, reflecting, and practicing to be able to see for yourself what is the truth. This Pali Canon is 45 books that are about this thick. Right? The average person doesn't actually study the original teachings of the Buddha. And this is unfortunate because the only way you would be able to get to enlightenment is as if you studied his original teachings. You don't need to study all 45 volumes of books, but if you're not studying his original teachings, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. This kind of sounds obvious when I say it to people that, yeah, you need to study his original teachings. But the vast majority of the world doesn't actually study his teachings because those books here in Thailand, it will cost you about 3 months of your salary to be able to acquire a full collection of these books. So the average person, the average temple doesn't even have the original teachings of the Buddha at that location. So the average person is still studying through this oral tradition, and people have changed it significantly. So you need to be able to get back to the original source teachings of the Buddha, and then you don't believe those teachings. So what we've done as part of the work that we do in this community is we've consolidated this into 13 books, and then we make it available for free. That way you can get access to his original teachings. You can download these books for free. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed copies here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon. That way you have easy access to his original teachings in a consolidated form. So we refer to this as the words of the Buddha, the path to enlightenment, revealing the hidden. Because these teachings have been hidden for a really long time, not intentionally hidden, but they've been hidden, because they're just so expensive to print out. So all these years, people haven't been studying his original teachings. But now what we're doing is we're revealing these hidden teachings to the world so that more and more people can actually understand what he taught. And then you would like to learn, reflect, and practice to be able to see the truth for yourself. And that's what's going to help you to be able to train your mind and get to this enlightened mental state. So the last thing I'll share about what the teachings of the Buddha are is they are to heal from what hurt you, so that you never need to hurt ever again. That's what his teachings are for. It's to do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development, working with the mind skillfully to be able to purify it and get to the point where you never experience any mental anguish or discontentedness, any frustration or agitation or any of those other discontent feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even have the slightest ickiness in the mind. Your mind's going to be cheerful, bright, glad, and uplifted in order to be able to experience this enlightened mental state. So what you're doing is you're healing from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt again. But what's hurting you is not the outside world. It's what's going on in your inner mind. So the work that you're doing is this inner work, where oftentimes people want to change other people in order to get to peacefulness. That's not what's going to get to your peacefulness. Changing your mom and dad, changing your brothers and sisters, changing your life partner, that's not what's going to get to your peacefulness. You need to do this inner work, this inner discovery, this kind of reflection, this introspection that you develop in the mind to be able to do this inner work on the mind. So that's what the teachings of the Buddha are. So I'm just going to pause here and see if you guys have questions, and then I'm going to teach you what the Buddha's teachings are not. If you guys have questions, we have microphones here in the white bowl, and we have some up here as well. If you use the microphone, the people online will be able to hear you, so they will really appreciate that. And for those of you guys that are online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any questions that way. So does anybody here or anybody online have questions? Do you have a question? Yeah, help yourself. There's a little gray button. You just press the button and then the lights will come on. Yeah, and you can take it back to your seat too if you like. Be comfortable.
Okay. The godlike being he referred to, would that be something that would be permanent or impermanent?
This being is impermanent. The Buddha talks about this being as being impermanent because the whole world is affected by the same natural laws. This being isn't outside of those natural laws. This being is inside those laws. But this being's lifespan is extensive compared to ours. That it's not, for us, it's like 80 years, 100 years, and that's our lifespan. This being has a much longer lifespan, but ultimately it is impermanent. This being is not permanent. Mm-hmm. And the ultimate goal of the teachings of the Buddha isn't to die and go to heaven and be with this being, right? Because that's not possible. That would be permanence, where we understand the world is impermanent. The ultimate goal is to train your mind and get to enlightenment. That's what's going to experience the peace and the joy in this life. And that's the beauty of the teachings of the Buddha, is you can see gradually, slowly but surely, you're actually accomplishing this. Because there'll be certain situations where you were once angry or frustrated, and you'll be in that same situation and you'll see your mind is not angry and frustrated. And you're like, whoa, these teachings are really working. So you get tangible evidence that what you're doing on this path is actually working in this life. So it's not believe, and then hope something good happens when you die. It's let's get to that better place now in this life. And then you can see your mind's actually doing that. Mm-hmm. Vibhav, you have a question?
Just following up on a question. We have talked about this a little bit before. You've said that God is the ultimate follower of these teachings. And I guess the question is then God is enlightened, or would you consider God an enlightened being in that, because he's practicing the teachings to an ultimate extent?
I consider that to be true. You won't see that in the teachings of the Buddha, but based on my experiences and interaction with this being, I would say this being is definitely enlightened. And by the way, I wouldn't say that he's an ultimate follower of these teachings, because I don't ever suggest anybody follow anything, but a practitioner for sure.
Practitioner, sorry, yes.
Yeah, definitely practicing these teachings from my experiences.
Okay, and I guess one slight difference between, say, God and Gautam Buddha is Gautam Buddha, because he was, I guess, a human being after he died. We don't know what happens to an enlightened being after their death, right? But in the case of God, because their lifespan is so big, we also don't know what happens to them after they die.
Right. So one of the things that Vibhav's referencing is that during the lifetime of the Buddha, he taught about certain things, of course. And when he got to a certain point in his teachings, he says, remember what I taught. I taught this. And he points to the teaching that I'm going to share with you guys after our break. And then he says, remember what I did not teach. I did not teach this. And he points to 10 different things. And he says, I didn't teach any of these things. And one of the things that he didn't teach is what happens to an enlightened being after they die. Because you need to get to a point where you're so peaceful and so joyful, so content in the present moment, that your mind's not longing, yearning for what's next. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be so peaceful and joyful, it won't matter what's next. But if there is something next, the Buddha didn't explain what that thing is. If he knew, he might not have actually known, because the way a Buddha functions is they will only teach things that they've actually experienced, because they know it's true, because they've experienced it. So he had never gotten to enlightenment and died before. It just doesn't happen that way, because once you get to enlightenment and die, you're not going to come back into the world. So he would have never experienced that. So whatever comes next after enlightenment is either as good as what you're currently experiencing in the enlightened mental state or better, or there may not be anything next at all. So the Buddha just left it as an undeclared teaching of what may or may not come next. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you're already so peaceful and joyful, it doesn't actually matter. So he didn't also teach what happens at the end of this lifespan of God either. He didn't teach that as well. So it's not something that's going to change your discontentedness, right? So what the Buddha taught, one time he was walking through a forest and he was with a bunch of his students, and he reached down and he picked up some leaves in his hand, And he asked his students, he said, what is more, all the leaves overhead in the trees or the leaves in my hand? And they said, oh, those leaves in your hand are insignificant compared to all the leaves of all the trees overhead. And he said, okay. He said, so too, he said, the wisdom that I acquired in my journey to enlightenment is represented by all the leaves and all the trees overhead. And the wisdom that I'm going to teach you in order to be able to get to enlightenment is represented by the leaves in my hand. So the Buddha understood way more things than he actually taught, but he only taught the things that actually lead to your enlightenment. So things like this, if he knew what those things were, he didn't teach it because it actually doesn't lead to your enlightenment, because he needed to help you to understand what it takes to transform your mind, and whether God lives or dies, or what happens to him after he dies. This isn't something that's going to change whether or not you can get to peace or joy. Let's just say, I don't know, make up some story that when God dies, this is what happens. Okay, well, you still get angry, you still get frustrated, you still get annoyed. You got to fix it, right? So it doesn't really matter. So that's why he doesn't teach those kinds of things. He only focuses you on what is it that's going to lead to your enlightenment, where you can get to peace and joy. And a lot of these other things about the world, he teaches you not to speculate about the world, because if you speculate about the world, he says it leads to either madness or frustration. You need to be able to know what is true and what is false and independently verify that. But what the mind will tend to want to do is speculate and try to figure out, like, what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And what about that? And what about this? Well, the Buddha is really kind of focusing you and saying, here, this is what you need to get to enlightenment. These leaves right here. Don't focus on all the leaves overhead. Focus on these leaves here in the hand. So that's one of those things that is outside of what's needed to get to enlightenment. But these kind of things are always interesting to talk about, but it's just not needed to get to enlightenment. Okay, so I don't see any other questions either online or here. So now I'm going to continue forward. One of my methods of teaching is I will teach you what something is, and then I'm going to teach you what something is not. And by understanding what something is not, it actually helps you to understand what something is. This is a way to help you to be able to see the path more and more clearly. So now that I've shared with you what the Buddha's teachings are, now I'm going to teach you what the teachings are not. The Buddha's teachings are not a collection of beliefs, doctrine, concepts, opinions, or views that will produce a pleasant afterlife if you believe in them, and an unpleasant afterlife if you don't believe in them. In fact, the teachings of the Buddha aren't about beliefs at all. They're not opinions. They're not views. They're not concepts. It's not a doctrine. It's not rules and commandments. Instead, he's helping you to understand the natural laws. These are things that you can independently verify. And the teachings of the Buddha aren't about an afterlife. It's about getting to peace and joy now in this life. So the Buddhist teachings are not any of these things. Also, depending on how you think about religion, I would say that the teachings of the Buddha are not a religion, but it really comes down to how you think about religion. If you think about religion as one person at the top telling everybody else what they should or shouldn't be doing, or if you think about a religion as something that has rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, things of this nature, or that there's certain rules and commandments that everyone must follow in order to create a peaceful world, if this is what you think of as a religion, then the teachings of the Buddha aren't a religion, because there isn't one person at the top telling everybody else what they should or shouldn't be doing. While you might see rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship at a place that they're referring to as Buddhist or a Buddhist temple, those aren't the teachings of the Buddha. Those are misunderstandings that people are having, and they're choosing to do those things which are opposite of what he actually taught. He didn't teach any rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship. He didn't teach any of those things. And he's not teaching you rules and commandments that everybody must follow. He's teaching you how to make your own wise decisions based on the wisdom that you cultivate about the world. He doesn't have rules or commandments. Even if somebody presents it to you that way, that's not the way that the Buddha presented it. He taught it as wisdom to be able to understand the natural laws and how the world's actually functioning. You'll see it in his original words that he's helping you to be able to see these natural laws, but they're not rules. Because if you're following rules, that means there's black and white. The world is not black and white. There's a large gray area here, right? So he didn't teach rules and commandments. So depending on how you think about religion, you might think that the Buddha's teachings are not a religion. He never said that he was teaching a religion. He said, I had figured out this better way of life, and here's this better way of life. And he taught people how to do that. His teachings are not punishments and rewards, depending on how you've been taught in other traditions. If you've studied other things, you might have been taught that way. You won't see that. You won't see the doom and gloom and the guilt and the shame and the fear and all those kinds of things as part of the teachings of the Buddha. Also, there's nothing mystical or magical in his teachings. It's not about superstition or auspicious things. He didn't teach those things. In fact, he taught just the opposite. He explains in his teachings that his teachings don't include any of this kind of stuff. Also, his teachings are not something to attempt to force other people or convince other people to do. Sometimes when you come to a place that's sharing certain teachings, they might try to convince you to go outside and convince other people to do the things that you're doing. That's not what the teachings of the Buddha are. It's not about coming to a place like this, learning a bunch of things, and then going outside and convincing other people to do those things. This is actually for you. It's not for other people. If other people would like to come here and learn, it's up to them to decide to come here and learn. It's for you to do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development. So you don't need to go outside and convince anybody to do the same things that you're doing. Instead, you just do what you're doing. You learn these teachings. You become more and more peaceful, more and more joyful. The people around you are going to see that. It's kind of like if you were in a restaurant and you were eating a piece of chocolate cake and you had a big smile on your face, and somebody walks in and is like, where did you get that piece of chocolate cake? That looks delicious. I want some of that, right? So if you become more and more and more peaceful over 6 months, a year, 2-year period, your friends and your family are going to be like, where'd you get that peacefulness from? I would like some of that too. And you're like, oh, it's over here. So you don't have to go out in the world and convince people. They'll actually start asking you questions as you start becoming more and more peaceful, right? So you're not going out and convincing others to do anything. Also, if you spend any time on social media, you might see these short little catchy phrases, these little memes that'll say like, da 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 da, the Buddha, right? Well, the Buddha's teachings aren't that. 99.9% of the time, whenever I've ever investigated those things, they're actually not his teachings. That those are actually quotes that people had in maybe the last 50 to 100 or 200 years, had nothing to do with the Buddha whatsoever. His teachings are actually very deep, very meaningful. They're very extensive. When you read his teachings, that's why they're in 45 books. They're this thick, right? They're not these little short, catchy phrases. So when you see these little short, catchy phrases coming across your social media and it says the Buddha, you can be pretty sure that's not from the Buddha. People are just using his name to give it credibility in order to make it look like it's actually something very profound, when in reality, it's probably not even from him. Also, his teachings aren't stuck in a cultural past that degrades, judges, or looks down or denigrates other people. Sometimes people think that the Buddha, taught 2,500 years ago, surely he denigrated women, right? He looked down on women and talked bad about women. No, that's not what he did. He taught women and men to respect each other. Surely the Buddha talked bad about people who have same gender relationships, right? No, he understood that there's no harm with two loving, consenting people choosing to have sex with each other. There's no harm there. So he didn't talk about those kinds of things. So his teachings aren't based in culture. If you just practice a culture, that means that group of people, that population of people have considered that this is what's acceptable. And now this population of people have decided this is what's acceptable. And this population of people have decided this is what's acceptable. But when you move throughout these different cultures, you can actually trip up very easily because one culture is different than another versus another. These are just rules and commandments that the different people have agreed to. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is get to the point where you understand the natural laws, which cuts through culture. You can actually learn and practice these teachings and go anywhere in the world, and you can function easily with ease. I've practiced these teachings in places like Mexico, the USA. I've been to Egypt. I've been all throughout the Middle East. There's been a couple places I've been to in the Middle East. I've been all throughout Asia. I've been all different places practicing these same teachings, right? I even why people. When I was in Egypt, I would say assalamu alaikum, and they would be so happy. Assalamu alaikum, right? And they would just why me back, not even necessarily knowing what that meant, right? So you can treat people using these particular teachings of the Buddha, no matter what culture you're in, because it cuts through that. And the Buddha's teachings don't judge, degrade, or diminish anybody whatsoever. He's teaching people to respect each other, to be loving and kind and warm and gentle to each other, because that's what actually helps you to experience improved results in your day-to-day life. So you won't see these kinds of things. If you see people doing this today based on the teachings of the Buddha, that's those people. It's not the teachings of the Buddha. Sometimes when people come here, they ask me about a temple that they see here in Chiang Mai where it says, no women are allowed to go in there. That's not from the Buddha. That's those people that are choosing to put that up there. The Buddha never taught that kind of thing. So if you're seeing those kinds of things, just understand that it's not from the Buddha. We're 2,500 years away from his teachings, and oftentimes people have gotten very far away from them. So that's why what I'm doing is I'm sharing with you his original teachings and encouraging you not to believe them, and then I'm going to walk you through them in a way that you can learn them, reflect on them, and practice them, and see the truth for yourself as you practice his teachings and train your mind to get more and more close to this peaceful mental state. So any questions on what the teachings of the Buddha are not? No questions? Okay. So you have a question? Yeah, Vipal.
I had a question on, like, when you just talked about like some temples teaching that women cannot go there, or I also talked about temple which is selling like lottery tickets, right? I mean, these teachings are very far from what the Buddha taught.
Mm-hmm.
And so from the law of karma that you taught, how does that affect those temples which are teaching or they're practicing uh, practicing these things that are very, very far away from what the Buddha taught?
Yeah, as part of the natural law of karma of cause and effect, then they're not going to have a community, a very vibrant, healthy, strong community that's going to support that temple. That's one aspect. But remember, the natural law of karma affects every individual differently. You just can't say, well, this temple has people who are gambling, so what's going to happen? Right? It's not a one for one. It's not a plug and play. It's not if this happens, that's going to happen. If this happens, that's going to happen. There's a whole range of things that can potentially happen. But you can see when you go to those places, they're not very strong, vibrant communities of people who are actively learning the teachings and actually making their way to enlightenment. The people in those kinds of places that are doing those things, they're not making their way to enlightenment. So one of the big unwholesome karma that they're experiencing is they're not getting to enlightenment, because they're going to continue to experience the unwholesomeness of anger and frustration and agitation and all these other discontent feelings. Whereas if they learned the true teachings and they were sharing the true teachings, they'd have a vibrant community of people who are supporting the temple, and those people are getting to enlightenment because they're learning the actual true teachings. You're welcome. Okay, so what I normally do at this point is I take a little break for you guys. It's basically about 2:30. So we can take like a 20-minute break, go up to 2:50. And that way you guys can use the bathroom. You can check out our little snack area over there. You can go outside, get some air if you like, and go to 7-Eleven or whatever you like, have some conversations with each other. That's one of the nice things about coming to a place like this is you get to build relationships. You get to meet other people that are into wholesome things. So feel free to hang out with each other. I'm going to start up at 2:50. And when I restart, I'm going to teach you guys the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is the very first teaching of the Buddha, where in 4 simple statements, you're going to be able to understand the problem that he discovered in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward of how to actually fix it. So I'm going to share that with you after break. So enjoy your break, and perhaps I'll see you guys afterwards. Okay. Okay, welcome back to you guys. I'm going to get started with the next part of our course where I'm going to introduce you and go in detail of the Four Noble Truths. This is the very first teaching of the Buddha. Whenever he would start with new students, he would actually start with this particular teaching because in four simple statements, it's going to help you understand the problem, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. The way that I think about the Four Noble Truths is it's kind of like a trail marker. If you've ever been hiking, oftentimes when you go hiking at the beginning of the trail, there's like a trail marker and it will kind of give you a heads up about what you're going to encounter. It'll say, walk this way for 2 kilometers, cross over a stream, walk over this mountain, kind of circle back to the parking lot. You'll kind of have a general idea of what you're going to encounter on this hike. And it kind of helps you along the hike. Well, this is the same thing, that the Four Noble Truths is kind of like that trail marker. It kind of gives you an idea of what it is that's happening on this path to enlightenment and what it is that you need to do on this path to enlightenment in 4 simple statements. So I'm going to walk you guys through this in a way that you can learn it, you can investigate and examine it, you can then reflect on it to verify it, and then you can practice it, integrating it into your day-to-day life and actually seeing the real results because of it. So as I go, I'm going to stop a few times in order to be able to open up the questions. You guys are welcome to ask anything you like, whether you're here at the temple or you're online. You can use the microphones here and then online. You guys can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or raise your hand in Zoom. It's important that as I'm teaching, that you don't actually believe anything that I say. Don't believe what I'm sharing with you. Instead, you need to be able to get to wisdom. That's what's going to help you. So I'm going to teach you first something that's called the 3 universal truths. These are actually building blocks to help you to understand the Four Noble Truths. These are going to help you to be able to get to the point where you can understand what is being taught in the Four Noble Truths. Without the 3 universal truths, you wouldn't actually be able to understand the Four Noble Truths. This particular teaching that I'm sharing with you is part of the Eightfold Path. It's called Right View is what I'm going to be teaching you. The Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha that everything else plugs into. So this is the entire path to enlightenment when you actually study this entire teaching. I'm actually going to be teaching it as part of the course coming up next week, Monday through Friday next week from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'm going to be teaching a foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course. I'm going to be teaching this entire teaching all the way through as part of that course. Each day I'm going to be teaching different things in that course, but on Tuesday morning I'm going to be teaching this particular teaching. But what I'm going to share with you today is just this first part, which is right view. It's on the bottom because it forms a foundation for all the other teachings. If you were interested in even remotely understanding anything that the Buddha has to share about the path to enlightenment, you would need to start with this important teaching. And it's the 3 universal truths that are going to help you to understand the Four Noble Truths. So I'm going to help you guys to understand this as building blocks. So the 3 universal truths, that starts with the universal truth of impermanence. Impermanence is helping you to understand how the world around you is constantly changing. That there's something called conditioned objects. These objects that are conditioned, they arise, they change, and they fade away. They're based on some condition. And because of that, they arise, they change, and they fade away. Anything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, they are all impermanent, meaning they are temporary. They're constantly changing. This is an important building block to help you to understand when we get to the Four Noble Truths. Because remember what the Buddha is doing is he's explaining to you the way the world is. He's not explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And the way the world is that it's impermanent, that things are constantly changing. You can see people have come and go in and out of the temple. You can see people coming and going in and out of relationships that you're in. This is where you would like to reflect, right? So there's something called conditioned objects that arise, they change, and they fade away. Then there's something called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects do not arise, they do not change, and they do not fade away. So enlightenment is that way. Once you get to enlightenment, it is unconditioned. It doesn't arise, it doesn't change, it doesn't fade away. There's no conditions that are causing it. So it's an impermanent mental state. And the natural laws themselves, they are unconditioned as well. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. So those are the only 2 things that are unconditioned, is the natural laws and enlightenment itself. But everything else in the world is impermanent. Anything you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind. Okay, so this is the universal truth of impermanence. I taught it to you in about 3 minutes, but you don't believe it. You need to be able to go from this intellectual part that we just did. Now you need to take it into reflection to verify, is it true or is it false? So you start asking yourself questions because you've been in this world long enough, you can independently verify whether what I just said is true or if it's false. Because if you can find something that you can see, hear, smell, taste that comes in contact with the body or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, if you can find something that's permanent, then you've disproven this and it's not actually a universal truth. So ask yourself questions like this. This physical body that you have, you're very familiar with this. You can start with this and reflect and ask yourself, is this body permanent, meaning that it's never changes, or is this body impermanent, meaning it's constantly changing? What would you say? Is this body permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? Ever since the egg and the sperm came together, it's been constant change. We get taller, we get shorter, we get bigger, we get smaller, right? When we first started out, we didn't have teeth, and then teeth grew in. That's change. Those teeth fell out. That's change. And then new teeth came in. That's change. Then we actually experienced cavities. That's change, right? We start getting gray hair. We get wrinkles. We get pimples, moles. Our skin complexion changes. We may have a different color of skin as we age. Our hair color changes. Even your eye color can actually change as you're going through life, right? So the body's constantly changing. What about your relationships? If your relationships are permanent, then that means you've had exactly the same people in your life your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, then that means people have been coming and going in and out of your life. So what would you say? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? What's that? They're impermanent, right? People are coming and going out of your life. What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? Seriously impermanent? Is yours going up and down, or down, 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 down? Or some people's goes up, 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 right? That's change too, right? So your bank account's constantly changing, right? What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? So we could go on and on and on like this. And if that's what you need to do, you should, because you need to independently verify this. When you look at a tree and you see green leaves in the tree and you see brown leaves on the ground, that's impermanence. When you're walking down the sidewalk and you see a crack in the sidewalk, that's impermanence. You can see on the floor of the temple, we have certain wood planks. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter, some of them are one color, some of them are a different color, right? That's impermanence. There's certain people that are in the class now, and that number changed because of it. Originally, we started out with a certain number of people, and then more people came, right? And then you guys have shifted around in different positions. You're sitting in different location than you were originally. That's just change. That's all that is. Right? It's just impermanence. So this is a building block that's going to help you to understand the Four Noble Truths when we get to it. So remember, you're not believing this. You need to independently verify it. The second universal truth is explaining the unenlightened mind and what the unenlightened mind experiences. If you've studied the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might have heard them refer to this as suffering. I don't use this word because it doesn't accurately reflect what the Buddha was teaching. I'll explain to you what the Buddha was teaching, and then I'll circle back and explain to you why I don't use the word suffering. So the Buddha's teaching here what the unenlightened mind experiences. He's talking about how the mind experiences discontentedness, which are conditioned feelings. These conditioned feelings are pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, or euphoria. There's painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. Those are very painful to experience. Then there's neither painful nor pleasant. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's very painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category if you like. But shyness is a good example of this. It's not painful. It's not pleasant. It's neither painful nor pleasant. Or say you're sitting on public transportation and somebody you don't know comes in and sits really, really close to you and your body is touching their body. You might say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. It's kind of uncomfortable. Maybe you're dissatisfied in that situation, right? So these are the three feelings that the unenlightened mind is going to experience: pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant. And they're conditioned feelings, meaning they're based on some condition. So if you look outside in the morning and you see it's sunny outside and you get really happy and excited about that, that's conditional happiness, conditional excitement. Based on the condition that there's sun, you're now happy and excited, right? But then if the sun goes away, now you experience painful feelings like anger or frustration, right? So these are the conditions that are producing this. If somebody came in and maybe gave you a raise, like if your boss came in and said, hey, you're doing such a great job, I'm going to give you $100,000 a year more in your paycheck. And you were like, whoa, this is outstanding. And you get so excited about that. That's conditional happiness, right? So the Buddha here is helping you to see what the unenlightened mind is experiencing, that it experiences conditioned feelings, that you're basing your feelings on some condition, that if it's sunny outside, you might be really happy. Or if your bank account balance is up here, you might be really happy, right? Or if your mom is coming to visit you, you might get really happy or excited about that, right? Those are conditioned feelings. The problem is that they're temporary, that they're going to arise, they're going to change, and then they're going to fade away. So ultimately it's unsatisfactory because you can only be happy when that particular thing is actually occurring. An enlightened being doesn't experience this. An unenlightened being, when they wake up in the morning, they'll see it's sunny outside and they'll get really happy and excited about that. But then when they go take a shower and they come out and they see it's raining, they'll be sad or frustrated or angry. That's what an unenlightened being is experiencing. An enlightened being, when they wake up in the morning, they're already happy. There doesn't need to be any condition met in order for the happiness to exist in the mind. The mind is cheerful, glad, bright, and uplifted. It's radiant. It's already happy when you woke up. And now when you see it's sunny outside, it's like, sweet, it's sunny outside. This is awesome. I'm going to go hiking today. I've been interested in going on that hiking trail for a long time. And now you go take a shower, and when you come out, it's raining. And where the unenlightened being would be angry and frustrated in that situation, the enlightened being's like, okay, well, it's raining, so I guess I'm not going hiking. I'm just going to stay home and maybe read a book, or maybe I go to the mall. Maybe I invite my friends over. You can do any number of things. But because the enlightened being didn't base their feelings on the sun, that means when the sun is gone, they can maintain their happiness. But in the unenlightened state, you can only be happy when you're getting what you want or what you expect. You'll see this in the Four Noble Truths by the time we get to it. But what this universal truth is explaining is what the unenlightened mind experiences, which are conditioned feelings. That based on some condition, there's either going to be a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, or a feeling that's neither painful nor pleasant. Essentially, the mind's going up and down and up and down and up and down. It's only a matter of time before you get irritated about something. It's just a matter of time, right? And your mind's going to experience that frustration or agitation or annoyance. So some people refer to this as suffering. I don't refer to it as suffering because that explains the painful feelings really well. The painful feelings, if you were experiencing anger, sadness, frustration, or guilt, or shame, or fear, you might say you're suffering. It explains that very well. But it doesn't explain the pleasant feelings or the neither painful nor pleasant feelings. So like I mentioned, if your boss came in and gave you a raise and you got really happy and excited about that, would you say you were suffering in that situation? Probably not. Right? Or say that person you don't know came on to the public transportation and sat really close to you and your body was touching their body. Would you say you were suffering in that situation? Probably not. So if you use this word suffering, it only explains the painful feelings. It doesn't explain the pleasant feelings and the feelings that are neither pleasant or neither painful nor pleasant. It doesn't explain those two feelings. So you're only understanding 33% of what the Buddha taught on this important topic. That means you're missing 66% of his teachings. And if you're missing 66% of a teacher's teachings, how could you ever get to the ultimate goal of what it is that he was teaching? So I would encourage you to think of this as the mind is discontent, it's discontented, or it's experiencing discontentedness. The mind is shaken up. It's unsteady. It's uncalm. That's what the Buddha is talking about here. And you can independently verify this, because remember, you're not interested in believing any of this. You would like to verify this, because what I just shared with you is this is what the Buddha is describing as the unenlightened mind. So you know your mind is unenlightened. So ask yourself, is this what you experience? Are there any feelings that don't fit into one of these three categories? Pleasant, painful, and neither painful nor pleasant. Are there any feelings that you experience that doesn't fit into this? And if so, when we get to the question period, let me know and I will help you. What's important here in using the word discontent is you need to be able to see that the conditioned pleasant feelings are just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. If you allow your mind to get conditional pleasant feelings, then that means the painful ones are waiting for you right around the corner. Because let's just say you get a brand new job and you're so excited about that brand new job. It's the perfect company, the perfect salary, the perfect title. The coworkers are amazing. You just can't wait to show up to that job. You're so excited. And now you go tearing into that job, so excited. Oh my gosh, it's the best thing ever. You're working there for a really long time. And let's just say 3-5 years later, the company goes out of business and you get fired. You're going to be angry. You're going to be frustrated because you allowed your mind to get the conditional pleasant feelings. That means your mind can only be happy when that condition is met. And that condition is going to change. So you need to be able to see the conditional pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, you're not experiencing conditional happiness. You're actually experiencing unconditioned happiness, unconditioned joy. Because in the unenlightened state, there's all these conditions that have to be met. If my mom and dad do this, if my brothers and sisters do this, if my boss does this, if the weather is like this, if I have this kind of house and this kind of car, and I have this much money in my bank account, then I'll be happy. So your happiness is shrinking because it's conditional. All those conditions have to be met. What the Buddha is teaching you to do is get to unconditioned happiness. It doesn't matter what the weather is. You can be happy either way. It doesn't matter what your bank account balance is. You can be happy either way. It doesn't matter what your mom or dad or your brothers and sisters say or do, you can still be happy. So you can't do that as long as your mind's experiencing conditional feelings. So you need to be able to see these conditioned feelings are the problem. That's what you're going to see in the Four Noble Truths. And the conditional happiness is just as much a part of the problem as the painful feelings in the neither painful nor pleasant. That's why it's called discontentedness, that your mind is unsteady, it's unstable, it's shaken up. What you would like to do is get to the unconditioned happiness, the unconditioned joy. That is permanent because it's unconditioned. Then there's something called the universal truth of non-self, which I'm going to teach you guys what this is. This is actually the solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind, one of those pollutions that are in the mind. But let me first explain to you the pollution, because this is the solution. You'll understand the solution when you understand the pollution or the problem. So out of those 10 fetters, those 10 pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind, the very first one is called personal existence view. This is where the mind is clinging to a body or a mind, thinking that this is who you are as a person. Your mind will cling to your self-image or your self-identity, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you can only be happy when you're being perceived that way. The personal existence view, the mind is confused. It's having misunderstanding. It thinks that this body is you or that this mind is you. So you can only be happy when you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived by others. So for example, if you ever went into a social situation and you spilled something on your clothing and you were embarrassed in that situation, that's your personal existence view, that you're clinging to this body, wanting others to be perceiving you in a certain way, and you can only be happy if they're perceiving you in that way. So if your clothes are clean, you feel happy because they're perceiving you the way you want to be perceived. But with this spaghetti sauce or ice cream all over your clothes, maybe you feel like you're a slob or you're unorganized or you're uneducated. And now when other people are around, you kind of look at them and your mind is thinking that they're looking at you in a certain way. And now you're upset or angry or frustrated because you feel like you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived. That's called personal existence view. Or say you maybe went into a mirror where you saw a mirror and you saw a pimple or a wrinkle or a mole or a gray hair, or you started losing your hair and you were shaken up by that. That's your personal existence view. Clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are, and you could only be happy if people are perceiving you the way you want to be perceived. And now with this wrinkle or this pimple or this mole, you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived, and you were shaken up by that. Or maybe you stood in front of your closet and you thought, who am I going to see today? And how do I want to look? And you put on certain clothes and you looked in the mirror, you're like, no, that's not it. You put on another set and you're like, no, that's not it. You put on another set and you're like, all right, now I feel comfortable to go outside. This is your personal existence view. The other thing the mind can cling to is not just the physical body, but it can cling to the mind itself. Inside the mind, you have a certain identity that you might be clinging to based on your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, or maybe your job or occupation, any number of things you can cling to. Like, I am American, or I am Brazilian, or I am Chinese, or I am a Brit, I am an Aussie, I am Italian, I am this, I am that. It can be your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation, any of this I am. If you cling to this as who you think you are, it's going to cause you difficulties and struggles. So for example, if you're in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, and you think, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I'm a wife. Now when you guys are together, there's a certain amount of comfort in that. But when you guys break up, your mind doesn't identify with I am single. So now when you're in this single, your mind might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because the mind was uncomfortable with I am single because it was identifying with I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend. And now when you're single, the mind doesn't like that. And it felt the way to solve that is to hurry up and get right back into another relationship so you can reassume that identity. Or maybe there was a certain job or occupation that you had and you clung to this as who you think you are. Like maybe say like if I was a police officer, I am a police officer. And now let's just say you're doing that job for 10, 15, 20 years and you're feeling pretty comfortable. You're feeling great. But then maybe you get injured and you can't do that job anymore. Or maybe you retire. Or maybe you get fired and now you're driving a taxi. And the mind's identifying with I am a police officer. Doesn't identify with I am a taxi driver. And now you're disgruntled and frustrated because the mind really wants to be a police officer, but it's driving this taxi. This is the mind clinging to an identity of who you think you are. Or say you think that I am Chinese, or I am Lithuanian, or I am Japanese, or I am Indian, or I am American. And now you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, they say all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle. I've never heard this before, but maybe someone might say this, right? And now when you hear that, you're like, oh, they're talking about me, right? But then it's only a matter of time before 2 tables over, they're going to say something degrading or disparaging. And now if you identify with that, I am American, they're talking about me, you might be ready to fight, right? So what the Buddha is teaching you with the universal truth of non-self is this is not who you are. This body is not you. This self-image is not you. It's not who you are. It's going to be constantly changing. So if you cling to it, wanting it to be permanent, when it changes, you'll have difficulties and struggles with that. Or this identity that the mind's clinging to, that's not who you are. And if you cling to it, it's only a matter of time before you're discontent. So you need to get to a point where you realize non-self, where you realize that this body is not you, and this mind is not you. This self-image that is here, it's just a physical form. That's all it is. It doesn't define who you are as a person. Same thing with your identity. Any identity that you have in your mind, that doesn't define who you are. Sometimes people do this with their choices and decisions. Let's just say in the past, you used to use drugs and alcohol. Somebody might have been taught that I am an alcoholic or I am an addict. That's not true. This individual might have chose to use drugs and alcohol in the past, but that doesn't define who you are as a person. Those are just choices and decisions that you made. But the mind will adopt this identity of I am an alcoholic or I am an addict. And I understand why people do that, because it teaches you to never go back and use drugs and alcohol again. But when you grab that and you put it in your mind as that's who you think you are as a person, now you might feel guilt or shame about that. Where in reality, it's just decisions that you made that the mind is adopting this identity of who you think you are. So the Buddha teaches you that there is no self. And this is something that you can independently verify, that there is no self. Sometimes when I talk about this, people understand it right from the beginning. Other times people are a bit confused because it's like, hold on a second. If I'm not this body and I'm not this mind, then who am I? What am I? Right? Sometimes people come to that conclusion, or they have those questions in their mind. So we spend so much time in our life accumulating the idea of a self that when somebody starts telling you that this is not who you are, it's very hard for the mind to wrap its mind around that, to be able to understand that. So no matter what category you're in, whether you understand it or whether you're having challenges to understand it, it's okay, because this is just an introduction to this particular teaching. But even at this early stage, you can independently verify that there is no self. Here's the way you do it, right? Because you're not interested in believing me. Think about yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adulthood, and then now. How you thought about yourself. Has it been exactly the same through those 4 phases of your life, or has it been changing? It's been changing, right? You haven't viewed yourself in the same way. That's how you can see that there's no permanent self. Here's another way. If your arm was amputated at the shoulder and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? Diego's shaking his head no. He's shaking his head no. You guys shaking your head no? That's the way most people answer. They say, no, I'm not less of a person. This is where you can see the personal existence view. Because intellectually, sitting here today, you can understand that this body is not you. Because otherwise, you would answer that question differently. If your arm is amputated and you think that this body is you, and that's true, that this is you, if that's the way you thought, when I asked you that question, that your arm's amputated, are you less of a person? You would say, yes. There's less body, so there's less me, so I'm less of a person. Yes. But hardly anybody ever answers it that way. Most people say, no, I'm not less of a person. That's because you understand intellectually that this body is not you. But in the heat of the moment, when someone says, wow, that shirt really brings out the colors of your eyes. You're so handsome. You're so beautiful. You're like, whoa, they're talking about me. But all they're doing is talking about this body. They're not talking about you. They're just talking about the body. Because it's only a matter of time before someone says, where did you get that haircut? Are you going outside looking like that? Right? And now you're frustrated and angry, right? So your confusion that the mind has, that lack of wisdom that the mind has, is it will firmly think this body is you. So in the heat of the moment, when somebody says something agreeable or disagreeable to you, you will either have pleasant feelings or painful feelings. But here, sitting here today, intellectually, you understand this body is not you, right? So there's multiple ways for you to be able to look at this. This is just a couple of things. As your journey goes forward with this path, you'll explore this a lot more, because you need to understand this in order to be able to shed this idea that this body is you or this mind is you. But it's not all going to happen at one time. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have questions on anything that I shared before we move farther. So do you guys have any questions here online? Remember, you guys have the mics, and online you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or in Zoom you can raise your hand and unmute your mic. So any questions? No questions? Let's see. Okay, I don't see any here either. Okay, so now there's just one more little building block, and then I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths. Okay? You need to understand what is a craving, desire, attachment, the expectations, the wants, the holding, the grasping, the clinging. What this is the way the mind longs and yearns for something. It chases after the objects of its affection, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So the mind will chase it and chase it and chase it and chase it. It's almost like an unquenchable thirst. If you've ever been in the mall and you saw a new pair of shoes and you're like, oh, new pair of shoes. I just can't wait to get those on my feet. Oh, they're going to look so great. It's not the shoes that is the craving, desire, attachment. It's the way the mind's longing, yearning for it. Or maybe it was a new video game or a watch or some other object of clothing or something like that. Or maybe a new phone. The mind's like, oh, if I could just get the iPhone, I don't know what we're up to, 17, 18. What are we up to? 17. Oh, if I can just get that iPhone 18, everything's going to be better. Oh, I just need to get it. It's not the phone that is the craving. It's the way that the mind's longing, yearning for it. You guys know what I'm talking about? Do you feel your mind pulling towards these things? That's the craving. Okay? So now that we've got all these building blocks, I can help you to understand the Four Noble Truths. In 4 simple statements, you're going to be able to understand the problem that the Buddha discovered, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward in a way that you can independently verify. Okay, so the problem is in the first noble truth. Everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. Those conditioned feelings are the problem. Because when the mind is experiencing conditional happiness, that pleasant feelings, or conditional painful feelings, the sadness, anger, frustration in others, or the neither painful nor pleasant feelings like shyness in others, your mind's shaken up. It's unsteady, it's uncalm. And now when you make decisions in that state, now it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. So this is the problem, that the mind's going up and down and up and down. It can't be peaceful and cheerful and glad and radiant and bright and uplifted permanently. The mind's going up and down and up and down and up and down. That's the problem that the Buddha discovered. Then the second noble truth is explaining the cause. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. I'm going to say that a few times, and I'm going to give you some examples to help you understand it. So the discontentedness, the pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. It's being caused by craving, desire, attachment. The mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection. It craves for things to be permanent, when in reality, everything around you is impermanent. So here's some examples. Think about that boyfriend or girlfriend that you got together with. When you guys first got together, you were probably so happy, so excited. The mind was getting its cravings fulfilled. At some point, you were craving a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you were like, oh, if I can just get one of those, everything would be great, right? And now this new person comes into your life. They start sending you text messages. They call you, check in on you. They invite you to the movies, to dinner. You go to the park. You have these great conversations. You have these nice walks. Maybe you have intimate contact together. Wow, so exciting, right? But then over time, the relationship deteriorates and you guys break up and the relationship's over. And now you're angry. Now you're frustrated. Now you're lonely and bored, or maybe you're missing this person. It's not your love that's causing this. This is the mind's craving, desire, attachment. The mind's holding on and it's craving permanence. It can only be happy if it gets what it wants and what it expects. But now when it's experiencing this impermanence, this breaking up of the relationship, the mind's not getting what it wants. So with the mind holding on, it experiences anger and frustration or loneliness and boredom, or you're missing this person. You might have seen this if you've had someone close to you that has died, like grandma, grandpa, mom or dad, brothers or sisters. If someone close to you has died and you grieved and were sorrowful, you weren't a bad person. You didn't do anything wrong there. That's not what the teachings of the Buddha are teaching you. He's just helping you to see, why is your mind experiencing this? The reason why is because the mind's craving permanence. That as long as grandma and grandpa are alive, your mind's getting what you want, and you're happy about that. But when things change, the mind doesn't like this. The mind's not getting what it wants and what it expects, which is grandma and grandpa. It wants grandma and grandpa to be permanent, where in reality they are impermanent. Because they were born, they had to die. That's the only reason why any of us die. Or maybe you've been to a wedding and you saw people grieving and crying at a wedding. Right? It's not love that's causing that, because here goes this person off into the world. They've started a new relationship. That's wonderful, right? But no, mom and dad are crying. Brothers and sisters are crying. It's like, that's my brother. That's my sister, right? Their mind's holding on. And now when you see them going off into the world with someone else, the mind experiences this painful feelings. Or think about if you can remember when you got dropped off at school, or if you've seen kids ever get dropped off at school. Parents are crying usually, and so are the children. It's not love, because love is a genuine interest in seeing them be well. You're sending your kid to school. This is wonderful. They're getting an education. They're going to go out into the world and learn about amazing things. But no, mom and dad are crying. Right? That's because their mind's holding on, and now their kid's going out into the world without them, and the mind's holding on and craving permanence. I'll give you some other examples that don't involve relationships, and you might be able to see this more clearly. Think if you bought a brand new car. Maybe this was your favorite car. You've been dreaming about this car for 10 years. You've been saving up money. You've been putting it under your mattress in your bed. And now you finally got enough money after 10 years to go buy this car. And you go down to the dealership. You give them that big stack of money. They hand you some shiny new keys, and you start up the car. And now you drive off the parking lot. And they're like, wow, look at her. She's so successful. Wow, look at him. He's so successful. And you're driving your car so proud down the road. And now you park it at a store, and you go inside, and you come out, and there's a big scratch across your car. Oh my gosh, you might be so angry or frustrated. You've been saving for this car for 10 years, and it's got a scratch. If you're angry or frustrated there, it's not the scratch that's causing it. And it's not the person who scratched your car. They're not causing you to be angry. What's causing it is the mind's craving for permanence. The mind's craving this car to be permanently beautiful, where it's not possible. Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise, because obviously when we walk through a parking lot, we aspire not to scratch anybody's car, right? That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is what's causing this anger and frustration. Well, it's the mind's craving for permanence. It's craving this car to look permanently beautiful when it's not possible. The paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. It's only a matter of time before you experience some kind of impermanence related to this car. So if your mind's craving permanence, and you're getting what you want and what you expect, you'll be happy about that. But when you don't get what you want or what you expect, your mind will be angry or sad or frustrated. So what we're talking about here is the mind doesn't like change. So one way to say this is that the mind craves permanence. Another way to say it is the mind doesn't like impermanence. It doesn't like change. When things are changing in your life, those have been the most difficult times. Look at your life. When you change living locations, when your relationships were changing, when your job or your occupation was changing, that was a very challenging time for you because your mind was holding on and craving permanence. And what we tend to do is when that frustration and that anger arises, we firmly believe it's somebody else that's causing it. And that's where you'll push people away. That's called aversion, or you'll push the situation away, or you'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile to someone. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at that person, trying to fear them into doing it your way. or you'll put expectations on someone, try to pressure them to do it your way. It's almost like the unenlightened mind is trying to create this bubble where everybody in your bubble does things your way. And if they don't do things your way, you get angry. So you push them out of your bubble. Or you become bitter and harsh and hostile, trying to fear them to do things the way that you want in their bubble. Or you'll put expectations on people and try to pressure them to do things your way. So as long as you're doing this, you can't live harmoniously with all people because everybody does things differently because of impermanence. It's only a matter of time before you encounter someone who does things differently than you. So as long as your mind craves permanence while you live in an impermanent world, when things start changing, your mind won't like that. So you need to be able to see this truth for yourself. Because remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief. So I encourage you to take a moment here to reflect on this through something in your own life. Maybe you were angry or frustrated this morning or yesterday or last week. Look at that situation with these fresh eyes. Because at that time, you might have been trying to blame somebody else. What was it that you wanted? What did you expect? What were you longing, yearning for? And if you would have gotten it, you would have been happy. But because your mind didn't get what it wanted or what it expected, you got angry or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. Again, you're not a bad person that your mind's doing this. Every single being that's ever been born has been doing this. Even the Buddha, he just figured out how to fix it. But if you can see this for yourself, you can have a real breakthrough to being able to see the truth of what's really causing these feelings. And then you can actually fix it. But when we get to the question period, if you have questions on this, let me know because I will help you to see it. There's been plenty of students over the years that have needed help to be able to understand how it's their own mind that's causing these feelings. That's what I'm teaching you, is that it's your own mind that's causing this. It's not the outside world. One time I had a student that called me up and they said, David, I need to talk to you. I know that you teach that it's other people that are causing my mind to experience anger and frustration, but I'm sure it's my wife. And I said, okay, what's going on? And he said, well, I went to work the other day and my house looked beautiful. And when I came home, she had this craft project all over the house. And I got angry and frustrated as soon as I walked in. How did my mind cause that? I wasn't even there. She's the one who messed up the house. Didn't she cause me to be angry? And I said, no, it was your own mind. That you were craving permanence. That when you went to work, your house looked a certain way. And when you came home, it looked different. And your mind experienced impermanence. And because you were craving it to look exactly the same way, you were expecting it to look the same way, it didn't look that way. Things just changed. That's all it was. When your bank account balance goes from here to here, all you're experiencing is change. That's all that is. There's no other person involved here. So if you get sad or frustrated when your bank account balance is changing, it's just change. That's all it is. Your mind is craving permanence. Or if it goes from sun to rain and you get frustrated or irritated, again, there's no other person involved. It's just change. But your mind is craving permanence. So if you can see this, you can have a real breakthrough. Because once you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, then you realize you can solve it. Whereas if it's other people that are causing this, you'd never actually be able to fix it. Because you can't convince 8 billion people in the world to do things your way. I mean, you could try if you like. You'd have to have a massive training program. You'd have to have centers all over the world. Everybody would have to agree your way is the right way. You'd have to have training manuals. You'd have to get everybody boned up on your way of doing things. That's pretty daunting, right? And even then, people are going to slip up sometimes, right? And they're not going to do it your way, right? So you could do that. You could try if you like, or you could just train one mind. There's only one mind that you can train. There's only one mind you need to train. Do you know whose mind that is? Whose mind can you actually train? Your own. That's it. That's all you need to do is train your own mind, and you can actually experience this enlightened mental state. You don't have to go out and train 8 billion people. So I just took your workload from 8 billion down to 1, right? So all you need to do is train your own mind. So what the mind's doing here with this second noble truth that the Buddha is helping you to see is that it's holding on. It's craving permanence. It's clinging to things, craving for things to be one particular way. And you can only be happy when you get things that way. So the third noble truth is explaining to you that there's a solution for this, that you can eliminate this. The elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. If you eliminate the cause, you'll eliminate the effect. So if you've been able to independently verify that it's craving, desire, attachment, the mind's holding on, and that's what's causing the discontentedness, well, if you eliminate that, you can eliminate your discontentedness. You just need to train the mind to let go. But the mind doesn't know how to let go, right? So you can verify the third noble truth too. The third noble truth is that if you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, if you eliminate clinging, you eliminate your discontentedness. Think back to the boyfriend or girlfriend that you broke up with, that you were angry or frustrated or lonely or bored or missing that person. At some point, you were like, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. Or you were like, you know what? If she wants to live in another part of the world, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. But as long as you were holding on and you didn't have that person in your life, but you wanted them to be in your life, you were angry and frustrated because your mind wasn't getting what it wanted. But at some point you let go. Sometimes it takes people 5 years, 10 years, I've heard from some people. They're in a relationship and 5 or 10 years later, their mind's still holding on. It hasn't let go yet, right? So that's where the fourth noble truth comes in, because the third noble truth is explaining to you that you need to train your mind to let go. But because the unenlightened mind is untrained, it doesn't know how to do that. And that's where the fourth noble truth comes in. The path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. This is the complete perfect plan that's going to guide you in how to train your mind to let go. And it starts with right view. And then from there, you build all these other factors: right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. When you understand what all of these are and you implement it into your life more and more closely, you'll see that it actually trains your mind to be able to get to a point where the mind's completely peaceful and joyful. But it's all based on right view. That's the foundation. Right view is helping you to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. If you didn't understand that, why would you do anything else on the path to enlightenment? Right? If you don't understand that it's your own mind causing these feelings, if you firmly thought that it was other people who was causing these feelings, why would you ever do anything to improve your own mind? Right? So the Buddha's starting you off with understanding that it's your own mind causing these feelings. You need to do this work. That doesn't mean that other people aren't doing things unwise, right? Because they could truly be doing something unwise. But that's not what's causing your discontent feelings. What's causing the discontent feelings is the mind wants everyone to do it this way. If they do it this way, I'm happy. But if they do it all of these ways over here, your mind doesn't like that, and now it's frustrated and angry. So they could truly be doing something that's unwise, but that's not what's causing the discontent feelings. It's the mind craving permanence. So this path starts with right view. Having the right view is to understand that it's your own cravings, desires, attachments that's causing these feelings. It's your mind's longing, yearning. If you have wrong view, that means you're going to be blaming other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. And then you're going to keep pushing them away. You'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, or you'll put your expectations on them. And it'll just produce broken relationship after broken relationship after broken relationship. So the more that you can establish right view, you can see clearly that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. You can actually eliminate them. So the way that I suggest you practice this right view is now and forever, whenever your mind is discontent, don't look externally, look inward. Start to look inward for what is it that you're craving? What are you longing, yearning for? When you figure that out, then you can train your mind to let go, and that's where your peace and joy is. And if you do this enough, you'll eventually get to the point where anger never arises, where frustration never arises. So for example, if you're checking into an airport and you think your flight's leaving in about 1 hour, and you go up to the ticket counter and you've got your bags, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. I'm sorry, ma'am. You can't check in right now. Your flight's not leaving for 3 hours. You've been delayed. And you notice your anger starting to come up. Well, instead of sitting in the waiting area being frustrated and angry and blaming the airline company or blaming your taxi driver or whoever it was that brought you to the airport, right? Instead of doing that, that's not the source of your anger. You start looking inward. What am I longing, yearning for? What do I want? Oh, that mango and sticky rice. I just can't wait to get to Thailand. Man, that mango and sticky rice, if I can just get that flavor on my tongue. Or maybe it's the elephants. The mind's longing, yearning to go see the elephants. And I just want to get to those elephants. That's the craving, right? So you need to let go and understand that this is normal. If you travel enough, there's going to be delays, right? There's going to be maintenance issues on the plane. There's going to be weather issues. There's going to be crew issues. Sometimes the crew doesn't show up, or sometimes they're sick or something like that. This is just impermanence. But if you're craving permanence, when you meet with a delay, you'll be angry or frustrated, and you'll blame everybody else. Instead of just looking inward and saying, what am I craving here? What am I longing, yearning for? Because if you can let that go, you'll protect your mind. You'll be really peaceful. So the Eightfold Path is going to teach you how to do this. But what I'm here to teach you today is just right view, so that you can start off with the right view, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Now, I'm sure you've been in knockdown, drag out fights with people where you've been adamantly trying to convince them that they have to stop doing what they're doing, or else you're going to continue to get angry. I'm sure you've experienced that, but it wasn't them. They weren't causing you to be angry. They could have been doing something unwise, but that's not what was causing you to be angry. Ever since we were a kid, we've been causing our own anger and frustration ever since we came out. Think about when we were little kids. We went to mommy and daddy and we said, Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? They said, sure, you can have chocolate and ice cream. Here you go. And we're like, thank you, Mommy and Daddy. You're so great. You're the best Mommy and Daddy ever. The second day came around. We said, Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? Sure, here you go. Here's your chocolate and ice cream. Thank you, Mommy and Daddy. You're so nice. You're so great. Wow, you're the best Mommy and Daddy ever. We're very pleasant feelings. The third day came around and we said, Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? No, you can't have chocolate and ice cream. You're the worst Mommy and Daddy ever. We're so angry because we weren't getting our craving fulfilled. If we would have just got what we wanted, but it's not permanent. Chocolate and ice cream is not permanent, right? So there was a period of time in our life where we were craving chocolate and ice cream, and we could only be happy if we got chocolate and ice cream. But you've probably let that craving go by now, right? If you have chocolate and ice cream, okay, that's fine. And if not, that's fine too. You're completely fine, right? But at one time, that's not the case. But your mind let go. And that's why you're now peaceful about that, right? So ever since we were kids, ever since we came out of the womb, we were inside our mom's stomach. We were hanging out, had the whole place to ourselves, unless you were a twin or something like that. We had food coming in on the umbilical cord. Boy, it was great in there. We were hanging out. We were having a good old time. We had the whole place to ourselves. And next thing you know, here comes some impermanence. You got to get moving, buddy. You got to get out. And now we either were born out through the birthing canal, or we had surgery, or my mom had surgery and we were brought out through the stomach. Whee! Right away from the very beginning, we were already discontent because we were craving permanence. We wanted to be inside the stomach, right? So that's why as soon as we came out and they cleaned us up, they wrapped us up in that tight blanket to be able to make us feel like we were inside the womb, because then we got what we wanted and we were happy. It feels so good, right? But when we first came out, that was all new. All of a sudden, there was air, there was light, we had to breathe on our own. All of a sudden, we had to start doing some work that we didn't have to do before, right? So we started having to eat for ourselves. We had to start doing all these things. All this impermanence was coming along. So right from the very beginning, we were discontent because of our craving, because of our longing, yearning, craving permanence. So if you can see this, you can have a real breakthrough. But if you can't, let me know and I will help you. So do you guys have any questions on the Four Noble Truths here? What's causing your discontentedness? No questions? Okay. I don't see any questions online either. Okay. So what I'll do then is I'll just end kind of where I started off. What the teachings of the Buddha are is to heal from what hurts you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But what's hurting you is inside your own mind. It's not the outside world, right? You need to do this inner work, this inner growth. You need to cultivate wisdom to be able to see true reality of what's actually causing these feelings. Because once you understand true reality and what's causing it, then you can actually fix it. If you don't understand true reality, you'll keep pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and putting expectations on people. And you'll never get to permanence, but that's what the mind's trying to do. So if you're interested in doing this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development, that's what you can do. You're an independent practitioner on your own journey to cultivate wisdom. A teacher is like a tour guide. We're pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and understand in order to be able to get to enlightenment. But it's you that's doing the work. Of course, your teacher is working in terms of sharing the teachings with you, but it's you cultivating the wisdom. You're not a follower. You're not a devotee. You're none of that kind of stuff. You're an individual who's looking to cultivate wisdom. And a teacher is the one who's pointing out for you the things that you need to learn and then providing you the resources to be able to do that. So if you're interested in healing from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt again, that's what the path to enlightenment is for. And I suggest people start with this first book. This is the best place to get started. You can get it for free by downloading it from our website. You can take it and go print it yourself. You can get it here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon. That's the best place to get started. And then we have various programs that are actually help you to be able to gradually learn this. Courses, classes, retreats. I have personal guidance. There's videos, podcasts, audiobooks, blogs now. There's all kinds of ways for you to learn. And it's all available at no cost for you. So if you're interested in experiencing this transformation, there's help for you. You just need to decide that you're ready to do that work. And now you can actually experience more and more of this enlightened mental state. So I'm going to pause one more time and see if we have any questions. It looks like we have a question coming in here online from Mike. Let me see. Mike says, he says, unfortunately, I don't have a microphone, so I'm typing my question in the chat. I have 4 questions. Have you learned the original teachings of the Buddha? Have you read the 45 books? I have learned the original teachings of the Buddha. Everything that I have, that I share, I've independently verified it before I actually share it. So what I'm sharing with you is not something that somebody told me that the teachings of the Buddha are, is I've independently verified his teachings. And now what I've put together in these 13 books that I share, this is what an individual needs from the discourses from the Buddha in order to be able to get to enlightenment. But everything that you need to get to enlightenment isn't contained in any book anywhere. So you're going to need teachers and guides that understand the path to be able to help you to be able to progress. But it's you doing the work. So I've learned the teachings of the Buddha thoroughly to the point where at this point I can easily help you to be able to understand how to get to this enlightened mental state. The second one is, are you still learning new things? I'm always learning, but in terms of the teachings of the Buddha, I've learned all of his teachings to the point where now I can say that my mind is trained, where I don't experience anger or sadness or frustration or any of these feelings. It's been many, many years since I've experienced any of those feelings. So that's why I'm motivated to be able to share these teachings with others, because I know if you experience this transformation, it'll be the very best thing that could ever happen for you. So that's why I dedicate my life to be able to share these teachings. It's kind of like discovering the cure to cancer. If you discovered the cure to cancer, like what would you do with it? Would you bottle it and mass produce it and become a billionaire, trillionaire? Or would you give it away to everybody for free? What would you do? Right? For me, I've decided to give it away for free because I know that I've discovered something that's even, in my opinion, better than the cure to cancer. Because cancer only affects a certain number of people, where discontentedness affects everybody. Right? So this is a cure to be able to solve that. And I'm interested in seeing more and more people experience it. So I am learning new things about the world. Like I just started learning in the last couple weeks about ChatGPT. Many of you guys probably already know how to use that. I learned different things about that kind of stuff. But in terms of the natural laws and the teachings of the Buddha, I've fully understood those. The second noble, this is third question. The second noble truth, can you give me a little bit of context when raising kids and putting my expectations on the kids? Yeah, when you have children, you need to guide them and you need to help them to understand wise decision making. But when you put expectations on them, that means you're trying to control them and force them. But also, if you are all the way on the other side where you could care less about what's going on with these children, you're not going to experience peace and joy there either. So you need to come to the middle where you gradually guide them. And I actually teach a class as part of our Harmony and Relationships course where I teach you how to guide children through the path to enlightenment. So for example, if you went to your child and you said, hey, I need you to clean your room. And they say, okay, I'll clean my room. And now it's been like 4 days and they haven't cleaned their room. If you go into their room yelling and hollering and screaming, to have them clean their room, that's coming from your craving. That harsh speech is coming from your craving. You're trying to fear them into doing it your way. But instead, you could just talk to them nicely and you could help them to be able to understand how important it is to have a clean room, and you can guide them and you can encourage them to clean their room. And then you can incentivize them to do so by teaching them, because the reason why they're choosing to not do something, or the reason why they're choosing to do something unwise, is because of their lack of wisdom. So if you're going to guide your children, you need to help them to cultivate wisdom. Forcing them and controlling them and motivating them through their fear means that they're only going to do that thing as long as they have fear. And they're not going to have that fear permanently. So that means as long as you're there putting pressure on them, they'll do that thing. But as soon as you release the pressure, they're not going to do that thing because they don't understand the wisdom involved of why that thing is wise. But if you teach them and you guide them without expectations, where you're not longing, yearning for them to do things a certain way, they can see the wisdom and why it's wise to do these things, and then they'll choose to do that whether you're actually there or not, either way. So there's a lot to be talked about here with children, but even with children, you're not interested in having expectations where you're expecting something. You can guide them, you can talk to them, you can help them to see wise decision making, but it's when you're longing, yearning for it, because sometimes they're going to meet your expectations, sometimes they're not. And that means that you're going to be angry or frustrated. So instead of having expectations, you have certain goals and objectives that you're helping them to be able to work towards. And this is coming through wise decision-making and guidance rather than forced behaviors. That's not what you're interested in. And then the last one from Mike, he says, that sounds like a very difficult thing to put off for my family, man. Do you have any tips on how to reconcile Buddhism with daily obligations, or what one can do to make more room for Buddhism while balancing it with family life? Thank you very much, David, for the informational presentation. So there's a lot to learn here, Mike. You can't learn it all in one day, but the teachings of the Buddha go very nicely with everything and anything in the world. Whatever you're experiencing now, you know that it's not working, right? Because you get angry, you get frustrated. Your family isn't probably, going forward so smoothly in all situations. By the time you get to enlightenment and you're guiding your family members, if they're interested in learning, you'll see that everything will go very smooth for you in life, that everything will be at ease. So you actually are putting those obligations on yourself, and you're putting expectations on yourself, and you're probably putting expectations on other people around you. And then when your expectations aren't getting met, then you get angry and frustrated. So there's ways for you to be able to understand this path and train your mind so that now you can function in these relationships more easily. But you're going to need to learn more. I also suggest that you start with this first book, like I was sharing here, because that's the way that you're going to be able to learn more of the full path. So I'm not able to go in and teach you every little facet of family life and how to apply that at this moment. But there's plenty of help for you. And by the time you are taking the classes and reading the books, you'll be learning all those things, but you just need to decide to learn. But there's nothing about the teachings of the Buddha that would hinder you from family life, or there's nothing from the teachings of the Buddha that doesn't apply to modern day, because he's teaching about these natural laws. And as you learn and practice this, you can apply it in your life. I actually live in a family. That's why I have white on. I'm not ordained. I live in a home with my son, with my wife, and I've applied these teachings and I've helped my family to be able to learn these teachings. And while at one time our life was very difficult and we struggled a lot, that's not the case anymore. There's no arguing, there's no festering, there's no frustration. None of that kind of stuff happens in our home. Everything's running very smoothly. There's lots of love, there's lots of gentleness, there's lots of laughing and cheerfulness, but there's also certain things that we need to do, right? We need to wash the dishes, we need to take out the trash, we need to make sure that we take care of the house and things like that. So all those things can be done through the teachings of the Buddha. But when you put expectations on people, that's where you get tripped up and your mind is going to experience discontentedness. So we can talk about this more in different classes, or if you'd like to schedule personal guidance, you can do that and I'll help you with those things. Okay, anything here you guys would like to ask? No questions? Okay, so I'll just share this with you guys as part of continued support on the path to enlightenment. Is there's ability for you guys to continue to learn and grow if you like. There's books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, quizzes. You can access all of that from our website. There's even a blog now that I just recently started that has articles for you guys to be able to read and learn about the teachings. There's in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats. It's all available from our website. There's 2 regular ongoing programs. There's the group learning program, which goes through this first book. Every Sunday, I go chapter by chapter by chapter by chapter. On August 9th, which is next Sunday, we're going to be restarting this program from the very beginning. We still have it going on now. So like tomorrow is the very last class, but on next Sunday, I'm going to start it from the very beginning. And over a 7-month period, I walk students through the entire book. So if you'd like to do that, that's a great place to get started. Then once a student goes through the group learning program multiple times, then there's the Pali Canon and English study group, where volumes 2 through 13, it takes about 1.5 years to learn all of those. And I have a program that meets once a week that walks students through all of those. So normally students will study in the foundational programs first, and then they'll move into this Pali Canon and English study group. And then when you're learning with the books and the videos and the podcasts and the courses and the classes, there's going to be times where you would like personal guidance. And if you'd like to schedule those either in person or online, you can sit down with me and I will help you. Because it's one thing to learn in a class like this, but it's a whole nother thing to relate it to your day-to-day situations. So if you'd ever like to sit down and talk, you can send me a message and we can sit down and talk in person. If you'd like to meet online, there's a scheduling tool online and you can just get on our website and schedule, and then I'll meet you right online through Zoom. And you can do that no matter where you are in the world. And then we have a Facebook group where students will post questions, and then I'm the one who answers those. Nobody else will answer them. So there's 4 ways for you to get help. You can ask questions in a live class. You can post in our Facebook group. You can send me a private message and I'll help you that way. Or you can schedule personal guidance and I will help you. So this is all the ways that you can get help, and it's all available at no cost. There's never a time where anybody's going to ask you for anything whatsoever, especially money. There's never a time for that. So if you're interested in learning and growing and developing, there's opportunity for you here to be able to do that. And all you need to do is decide that you're done with the anger, you're done with the frustration, you're tired of the broken relationships, you don't like the stress and the anxiety anymore, and you're looking to do something different. This path to enlightenment, it actually works. The teachings of the Buddha lead exactly where he said they do, to this better way of life, to this peaceful and joyful mental state. So thank you all for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. As you guys would like to learn more, just feel free to reach out. I'm here to help all of you. Okay? So have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps we'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.